Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. Here's a quick summary of the latest quarterly meeting between the DPAC Steering Committee and Transport Canada's RPAS team. Let's jump in. Our meeting took place on July the 10th over Microsoft Teams, as usual, and was well attended by both the DPAC Steering Committee members and Transport Canada. One curiosity about this meeting was that the Transport Canada team was present without a formal leader. Jeremy Fountain left TC a couple of months ago and has not yet been replaced. Mark Vanderregen is the acting manager of the team until a hiring decision has been made. And Yannick Lanthier was also in an acting role as acting leader of the RPAS traffic management team. Somebody joked that all these actors, well, it was like a Shakespearean play. But you know what? To their credit, these guys rose to the occasion, did their jobs well, and all confidently addressed their areas of responsibility. So well done. Anyways, we had a full agenda and dove straight in. The first topic was an easy one, an update on the new regulations. I've discussed these regulatory changes in a video about a year ago, so I'll leave a link in the description, just in case you need a reminder of what these things are. But for now, here's a quick recap. For recreational and small commercial folks with advanced pilot certifications, there are two new allowances being proposed, flying around structures and flying, well, slightly farther out of visual line of sight. For larger commercial drones, the new rules offer some pretty significant opportunities, including a framework for flying drones up to 150 kilograms and for low-risk BVLOS operations. Well, plus there's several tweaks to the regular rules for everybody, but the bad news is that registration fees were being proposed to go from $5 to $10 per drone, and fairly hefty application fees were on the table for SFOCs. DPAC did provide a significant amount of feedback to Transport Canada on these proposals back in the day, including suggestions also for better FPV rules. Mark said everything was still on track towards an official announcement in the Canada Gazette later this year, with the effective date still expected to be April of 2025. He also indicated that all the feedback from the various public sessions, including DPAC's feedback, had been read and considered. But despite our attempts to squeeze some details out of him, he refused to divulge what changes, if any, had actually been made from the initial proposals. I sure hope they did do the right thing about the fees and kept them the same as they are now. I'm also hopeful that things like the requirements for an advanced spotter in the extended VLOS case have been corrected. But I'm not holding my breath about FPV improvements or any of the other sensible but fairly radical changes we suggested. I guess we'll find out soon. The second agenda item was an update on the aviation radio issue. And you probably saw my video where I called the whole situation a fiasco, since the problem hasn't been resolved in over 2 years. Now, I do want to emphasize that the holdup here is entirely on the ISED, or Industry Canada side, not Transport Canada. In fact, the TC guys are wholeheartedly in alignment with us that drone pilots should be allowed to talk on aviation radios when the situation warrants it. They are trying to set up a meeting with ISED in July, but I sure wish they would go at it maybe a bit more aggressively. Enough is enough. 2 years, really? By the way, DPAC has offered to help out. Our third topic was about the procedural or practical elements of dealing with population density when applying for an SFOC or for BVLOS flights in the context of the new regulations. When planning these flights, the regulatory expectation is that the pilot performs what's called an operational risk assessment, including determining the risk of flying over populated areas. This is described as a 3-step process, where the first step is to do what they call a virtual site survey based upon Stats Canada data. The Stats Canada population maps go down to the level of what's called a dissemination area, roughly corresponding to individual postal codes. This step is not the end of the process, though. For example, in a rural area, the dissemination area could be quite large, and your operation could be planned for a relatively low population area versus, say, a town or village in that dissemination area. So the second phase of the risk assessment is actually an in-person site survey where you make your own on-site assessment of the population. Finally, a third assessment phase during your actual operation it should be done to ensure a gathering, say, hasn't suddenly appeared right in the middle of your flight area. The details of these three phases are spelled out in an advisory circular that was updated in June of 2024. Be sure to look at this version 2 of the AC, when you are performing these risk assessments. There's a link in the description down below the video. Our final topic was to glean a better understanding of how the whole enforcement and tribunal process works, which could be of interest to the person who violated a no-fly zone over the Calgary Stampede a few days ago. They're facing potentially thousands in fines as a result of their actions. Now, while basically any police officer can theoretically charge you for violating one of the RPAS regulations, there are currently only 17 organizations across Canada that are formally in a partnership with Transport Canada to issue drone-related tickets. These include several municipal police forces, such as the Ottawa Police, also the Ontario Provincial Police, a nuclear power security team, via rail for some reason, and forestry services. These organizations are trained and equipped to basically write you a ticket on the spot if you're in violation of CAR's Part 9 drone regulations, such as, well, say flying without the appropriate pilot certification or not registering your drone, or even more seriously, flying your drone in a no-fly zone identified by a NOTAM. If you do receive a ticket like this, it will indicate what you've been charged with and your fine, much like a speeding ticket. And just like a speeding ticket, you'll have the option to either just pay the fine or appeal it. The appeal process, in the case of drones, involves what is called a tribunal, much like in manned aviation. Depending upon the case, the tribunal could consist of a panel of experts to hear your defense and make a final decision. While we would hope that such a tribunal would include people with practical experience with drone operations, we did say that DPAC members should be considered candidates for such a tribunal if a recreational perspective was required, and the offer was appreciated. By the way, just because you're flying a drone, if you're doing something, well, say stupid or just plain illegal, you may be charged with something other than a Part 9 violation, such as being a public nuisance, endangering a firefighting operation, or whatever. So please fly safely and be respectful of bylaws, wildfire restrictions, and everything in between. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. Overall, an interesting meeting with Transport Canada covering a broad range of topics, and as usual, a considerate and constructive discussion. Thanks for watching.